2025 erroneously read that SB 170 do pass by substitute, LC 60113S. The committee had actually recommended that SB 170 do pass by substitute, LC 600123S. I ask unanimous consent that the report of the committee be corrected to transfer the action taken by the committee and that the journal be corrected accordingly.
Senator from the 14th, you'd like to speak?
Parliamentary inquiry,
State
Mr. President.
inquiry.
Mr. President, it is not true that the presentation by the senator from the 16th reminded me that early in the session, because I forgot where I sat this term, I accidentally canceled a vote on the senator from the 16th machine. Is that not true?
Well, the senator knows what he speaks.
And is it not true, Mr. President, that because I missed my deadline for getting that in the journal, this is my public mea culpa to apologize to the senator from the 16th? Is that not true?
You're a good man.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator. If there's no objection to the senator from the 16th motion, without objection, motion granted. Now I recognize senator from the 6th. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. After getting through the reading and catching that little error, the journal from the 25th day has been read and found to be correct, and I move we dispense with the reading of the journal.
All right. Sounds good, Senator. Is there objection to dispensing of the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none. The journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and references the Senate bills. Mr. Secretary.
Senate Bill 313 by Senator Estevez of the 35th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section.
State and local government. General.
Senate Bill 314 by Senator Estevez of the 35th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Title
Health
30.
and Human Services.
Senate Bill 315 by Senator Estevez of the 35th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 6 of Chapter 3 of Title 44 of the official
Economic Development.
Senate Bill 316 by Senator Goodman of the 8th. The bill to be entitled an act to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the
State and local government.
Senate Bill 317 by Senator Goodman of the 8th. The bill to be entitled an act to authorize the
State and local government.
Senate Resolution 310 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others. A resolution creating the Senate Study Committee
Children and Family.
Senate Resolution 311 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others. A resolution creating
Health and Human Services.
Senate Resolution 319 by Senator Rahman of the 5th and others. A resolution recognizing July 2025 as Muslim.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 320 by Senator Estevez of the 35th and others. A resolution creating the National Statuary Hall Collection Replacement Committee.
Rules.
And Senate Resolution 323 by Senator Eccles of the 49th and others. A resolution.
Economic Development.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
First reading references the House bills.
House Bill 66 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5C.
Finance.
House Bill 240 by Representative Williams of the 148th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article.
Banking and Financial Institutions.
House Bill 303 by Representative Gillard of 162nd and others. Bill to be entitled.
State institutions and properties.
House Bill 307 by Representative Ballard of 147th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 6 of Chapter.
Education and Youth.
House Bill 373 by Representative Glaze of the 67th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to.
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 377 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Subpart 1.
Banking.
House Bill 422 by Representative McCollum of the 30th and others. Bill to be entitled.
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 423 by Representative Wade of the 9th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend.
Public Safety.
House Bill 475 by Representative Gamble of 15th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48.
Economic Development.
House Bill 495 by Representative Dickey of the 134th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to education so as to repeal Chapter 18 related to the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation to amend.
Agriculture.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
Secretary will read reports of Standing Committee.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Children and Families has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 245 do pass. Senate Bill 259 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 107 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 108 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach of the 21st District, Chairman. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 65, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 82, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 93, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 171, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 295, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hickman of the 4th District, Chairman. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice of my intent to introduce a minority report to be read along with the majority report of the presentation of Senate Bill 65 before the whole body of the Senate, which was passed by the Committee on Education and Youth on March 3rd, 2025. Very respectfully, Senator Setzler. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Higher Education has had under consideration the following legislation has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 120, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns of the 23rd District, Chairman. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice that I will introduce a minority report to read along with the majority report of Senate Bill 120, which the Committee on Higher Education passed on Monday, March 3rd, 2025. Sincerely, Senator Jones. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 243, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 276, due pass. Senate Bill 284, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District, Chairman. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 27, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 61, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 179, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 204, due pass. Senate Bill 244, due pass. Senate Bill 268, due pass. Senate Bill 279, due pass. Senate Bill 298, due pass by substitute. Senate Resolution 262, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 42nd District, Chairman. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice I will introduce a minority report to be read along with the majority report of Senate Bill 61, which was passed by the Committee on Judiciary on Monday, March 3rd, 2025. Sincerely, Senator Parent. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 75, due pass. Senate Resolution 216, due pass. Senate Bill 264, due pass. Senate Resolution 282, due pass. Senate Bill 291, due pass. Senate Bill 293, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers, the 56th District, Chairman. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 194, due pass. Senate Bill 221, due pass. Senate Bill 239, due pass. Senate Bill 256, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser of the 46th District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 285, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Williams of the 25th District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 64, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 162, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 242, due pass. Senate Bill 255, due pass. Senate Resolution 148, due pass by substitute. Senate Resolution 246, due pass. Senate Resolution 309, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Brass, the 6th District, Chairman. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice I will introduce a minority report to read along with the majority report of Senate Bill 242, which was passed by the Committee on Rules on February 28th, 2025. Sincerely, Senator Jackson. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice I will introduce a minority report to read along with the majority report of Senate Resolution 246, which was passed by the Committee on Rules on February 28th, 2025. Sincerely, Senator Jackson. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations General has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 260, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon, the 45th District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 206, due pass. Senate Bill 237, due pass. House Bill 462, due pass. Senate Bill 234, due pass. Senate Bill 235, due pass. Senate Bill 302, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon, the 45th District, Chairman. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Resolution 245, due pass. Senate Bill 236, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 36 by Senator Setzler, the 37th, and others, Georgia Religious Freedom Restoration Act and Act. Senate Bill 63 by Senator Dixon, the 45th, and others, Quality Basic Education Act. Local school systems offer certain exams to home study students required. Senate Bill 121 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, uninsured motorist coverage minimum required under the motor vehicle liability policies for an individual convicted of driving under the influence of reckless driving increase. Senate Bill 124 by Senator Still, the 48th, and others, education, state school superintendent and Department of Education to take all steps reasonably necessary to implement guidance documents from a federal agency require. Senate Bill 132 by Senator Strickland, Little 42nd, and others, insanity and mental incapacity, hearing before a court orders an evaluation of the mental competency of accused persons to stand trial require. Senate Bill 148 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, public school property and facilities, outdoor learning spaces, pilot program provide. Senate Bill 181 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, education, public school, and public post-secondary institutions shall not accept funding from or enter into contracts with foreign adversaries provide. Senate Bill 201 by Senator Walker, the 20th, and others, consumer transactions, increase consumer protection for homeowners entering into contracts with contractors following natural disasters provide. Senate Bill 207 by Senator Strickland, the 42nd, and others, professions and businesses, a pre-clearance process and the licensing of individuals with criminal records who make application to or are investigated by certain licensing boards and commissions create. Senate Bill 213 by Senator Kirkpatrick, the 32nd, and others, Fair Business Practices Act of 1975, commercial cheating services that target students and examinees seeking a professional license as an unfair, unlawful, and deceptive trade practice ban. Senate Bill 230 by Senator Still of 48th and others, condominiums, maximum amount of insurance deductibles payable to unit owners, remove the limitation. Senate Bill 240 by Senator Williams of the 25th and others, Georgia Native Plant Month, designate April of each year. Senate Bill 241 by Senator Williams of the 25th and others, funeral directors, organic human reduction as a means of disposing of deceased human bodies provide. Senate Bill 254 by Senator Cowsett of the 46th, Georgia Hemp Farming Act, Delta 9 THC, and consumable hemp products provide milligram limits. Senate Resolution 217 by Senator Kennedy of 18th and others, Senate Study Committee on Combating Chronic Absenteeism in Schools create. House Bill 167 by Representative Hagan of the 156 and others, Game and Fish authorized fluorescent pink hunting outdoor garments. House Bill 287 by Representative Rhodes of the 124th and others, Environmental Protection Division, Environmental Advisory Council update reference date to standards, rules, and regulations. Mr. President, that completes the order.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Any motions to excuse? All right. Secretary will call the roll. Senator, signify your presence by voting the yay switch. You recognize the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, senator from the 26th is excused. Any other motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll. Senator, signify your presence by voting the yay switch. Secretary, unlock the machine. It is now time for our morning devotion, afternoon devotion. All senators, please take your seats and cease all conversation. I would ask that the doorkeepers secure the chamber at this time. I recognize the senator from the 17th to introduce our chaplain of the day and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Please join me in our Pledge of Allegiance to the United States. Flag. Good morning, Senators. I am delighted to honor and have our chaplain for the day, Reverend Dr. Keith Reynolds. Dr. Reynolds is a native of Gary, Indiana. His professional career began in 1981 as an educator with the DeKalb County School System. He was a teacher, coach, principal, and teacher of the year at his school and retired after 31 years of service. Also in 1981, Pastor Reynolds accepted God's call and entered Christian ministry. He has served as an associate minister, led worship service at the Palmer House, a senior citizen high-rise, as well as served in the Kairos ministry, which gave him the opportunity to mentor to men incarcerated in both the Georgia State Penitentiary and the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Then on January the 30th, 2011, the members of Christian Fellowship Baptist Church in College Park elected him as their third pastor. Throughout his career, Pastor Reynolds infused the Lord's work in all he did by blending his administrative skills in education and his call to the Christian ministry. Pastor Reynolds holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Lincoln University, a Master of Arts degree in education from Clark Atlanta University, an educational specialist degree from Jacksonville State University, and the Doctorate of Education degree from Clark Atlanta University. His additional postgraduate work includes studies at the Interdenominational Theological Center, ITC, and the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, and a certificate of theology. Dr. Reynolds is a biblical scholar, a true man of God, and an inspiration to his church and community. He resides in Stone Mountain, Georgia, with his lovely wife of 30 years, Ms. Marilyn Johnson Reynolds, who is with him today. We are delighted to have him in Clayton County as the senior pastor of Christian Fellowship Baptist Church. Colleagues, our chaplain for the day, Reverend Dr. Keith Reynolds.
Good afternoon to everyone. I preached my sermon yesterday, so I won't be long today. But in thinking about what I wanted to encourage you, hopefully inspire and inform you just a little bit about the one word, service. Service to the least of these. I'm sure all of you are in your seats this afternoon and in your careers, what you've done, with that thought of serving others, doing the very best you can do to help those individuals who find themselves on the curbside of life. No matter what our differences are, no matter what our political parties may be, the bottom line, the bottom goal, the major objective, we want to serve all of God's people, to make sure that they have the very best of what God has afforded them to have. And so as I encourage you this afternoon, please keep in the forefront of your minds and in your thoughts, how can I serve this state and this country and this world? The final words will be, and the greatest among you will be my servant. Let us bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Father God, we come this afternoon with thanksgiving in our hearts and in our minds. We ask, Heavenly Father, that you continue to keep your loving arms around us, that you would lead us and guide us, bless us. Father, we ask for your presence in each and everywhere that we go. We ask for your power to strengthen us and to energize us as we travel the tedious road of life. We ask for your protection from dangers seen and unseen. We ask for your patience with us and allow us to be patient with one another. We ask, dear Lord, for your peace, that it will rest, rule, and abide in us, and that your peace will surpass all understanding. Oh, Father, our God, we need you today in our world and our state and our counties and our government bodies. Give us the desires of our hearts, and that those desires be in your will and in your way. We do love you, Lord, and we rest in the assurance of your love for us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
We are always glad to have our doctors of the day, and to introduce our doctor of the day, I call on the senator from the 39th. Introduce our doctor of the day. Senator?
Good morning. I'm so excited to introduce you to our doctor of the day. Dr. Dorsey Norwood is a board-certified pediatrician based here in Atlanta with over 25 years of experience in the medical field. She earned her medical degree from Emory University School of Medicine in 1997 and completed her residency in pediatrics at the same institution. She currently practices at Norwood Pediatrics in East Point. She's affiliated with several hospitals in the area, including CHOA. In addition to her clinical practice, Dr. Norwood serves as an associate professor of clinical pediatrics at Emory University, a position she's held since 2002. She has been named a mom-approved doctor by Atlanta Parents Magazine multiple times. She's also received teaching awards from Emory University. She is fluent in both English and Spanish, allowing her to effectively communicate with her diverse patient population. She is praised for her professionalism and compassionate care, and today we get to visit with her as our Doctor of the Day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator Halpern. What an amazing honor it is to serve as Doctor of the Day today. My father, Felton Norwood, was a pediatrician in North Atlanta for 40 years, and he was an amazing diagnostician and deeply influenced my decision to become a doctor. He, like Sherlock Holmes, loved the challenge of a good pickup, of a good finding. So I worked with him for 2 years before he retired, and then I moved my practice down to East Point to serve the folks of South Fulton. I have been warmly welcomed there over the last 20 years. I've been invited to birthday celebrations, to funerals, and to quinceañeras. I now am seeing the children of my patients, which is something. And when my father heard about that, he said, when you start seeing the grandchildren, that's when it's time to consider retirement. So I thank you for everything you do and your unwavering commitment to the people of Georgia. Let's continue to serve together. Thank you so much.
We have several special presentations here today, and several special people that we want to recognize. But one of them here today is former Senator Kelly Loeffler, who is now our administrator for our small business part of the Trump administration, and we're really proud of her being confirmed, number one, but also the contributions she's going to make to the new administration, and very excited about having her here today. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 247 by Senator Gooch, the 51st, and others, a resolution commending Kelly Loeffler and for other purposes. Whereas Kelly Loeffler was appointed by the President of the United States to serve as the Administrator of the Small Business Administration, bringing her record of public service and leadership to the role. And whereas Kelly Loeffler has previously served as United States Senator from Georgia, during which time she championed policies to support small businesses, strengthen the economy, and empower American workers. And whereas Kelly Loeffler has consistently demonstrated a deep commitment to fiscal responsibility, transparency, and accountability in government, earning the trust and respect of her constituents, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Kelly Loeffler for a distinguished career, impactful tenure in the United States Senate, and her ongoing efforts as the Administrator of the Small Business Administration to strengthen and support American small businesses. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I recognize the majority leader to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, today I'm honored to recognize an extraordinary Georgian. Former Senator Kelly Loeffler was appointed by President Trump to serve as the administrator of the Small Business Administration in December of 2024, and she was confirmed by the Senate on February 19th of this year. Senator Loeffler brings an impressive record of public service and leadership to the role. She led a successful business career in the automotive and financial services industry and venture capital. She went on to become a key leader for the Intercontinental Exchange and later the New York Stock Exchange until shifting her focus to public service. When Governor Kemp appointed Loeffler to the U.S. Senate in 2019, she became Georgia's first female senator in nearly 100 years. In the Senate, she championed policies that fostered economic growth, cutting burdensome regulations, and strengthened opportunities for American workers and entrepreneurs. Senator Loeffler's leadership was highlighted during COVID-19 pandemic, where she played an instrumental role in securing support for small businesses, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, which retained over 1.5 million jobs here in Georgia. Following her tenure, she founded Greater Georgia in 2021 to register, engage, educate, and mobilize voters across our state. Her efforts helped drive the record voter turnout that we had in 2024, ensuring that nearly 5.3 million Georgians had their voices heard during the election cycle. Now she's back in D.C. fighting for our businesses, and fighting against regulations, generating opportunities for millions of Americans. Senators, it's my honor to introduce to you Administrator of the Small Business Administration, former Senator Kelly Loeffler.
Thank you very much. Wow, thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. It's incredibly humbling to be here. Thank you for that incredible resolution. And as a kid from a farm who was shy and awkward, it's quite a honor to stand in front of you and accept the resolution and to report on you our early work in Washington. So thanks for making time for me today. Look, as President Trump's administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, I was sworn in less than 2 weeks ago. So I'm truly humbled that you've invited me to be here. And let me just say, I am very grateful to Governor Kemp for offering me the opportunity to enter public service in 2019. And I'm just so grateful for all the work that y'all have done during this session already to fight to improve the lives of all Georgians and to drive our state's economy forward. It's an exciting time to be back here in my home state. We've got a lot to update you on in Washington. Can't wait for tomorrow night. There's going to be some more important remarks coming tomorrow night. But I am so honored to be able to help implement President Trump's America First agenda on behalf of Georgia's small businesses and to do so responsibly on behalf of America's taxpayers. We are off to a really fast start, but there is so much to do. And today, you may know this, but there are 1.2 million small businesses across Georgia. They make up 99% of all businesses in our state and across the country, and they create 2 out of every 3 new jobs. Now, that is why they're called the backbone of the economy. It's one of the reasons I moved here to Georgia in the year 2002 to work for a startup company, spent nearly 2 decades helping build that company, and it grew into a $100 billion Fortune 500 company that now employs 15,000 people. That is the power of policies that are pro-growth and that lift up all communities. And your work has created opportunities for millions of Georgians, and it's because many of you are small business people yourselves. You've not just led as public servants, but you have walked in the shoes of entrepreneurs, whether it's agriculture or technology. So you understand what it is to be a risk taker, a job creator, an innovator, and a taxpayer. So we all know what Main Street means in our communities at home, but small businesses have had a tough 4 years over the last 4 years, thanks to inflation and an out-of-control bureaucracy. And so I really applaud your work to rein that in, to reverse the pain that small businesses have felt. You're cutting taxes, you're eliminating needless red tape, you're advancing tort reform. And so your work is clearing the way of burdensome regulations, frivolous lawsuits. These are things that crush opportunity and growth. I know many of our own first jobs were with small businesses. I attribute so much in my life to my first job that I had at that small business. My family ran a small business. And you're laying that groundwork for future generations of continued economic expansion so that everyone can thrive. And make no mistake, right now, in this moment, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to revive the American dream. And those dreams start in Main Streets, from Bainbridge to Blairsville and all across Georgia. And that's the spirit I've taken with me to Washington as the only cabinet level position that supports small businesses. And that's really the focus of my day one priorities at the SBA. And every priority I have is focused on returning to our founding mission to empower small businesses and to grow the economy. And that means implementing President Trump's America First agenda, eliminating wasteful spending, cracking down on fraud, cutting red tape, responding to disasters, and restoring accountability. So I'm incredibly proud to work with DOGE to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. We've moved quickly to implement President Trump's executive actions, whether it's DEI, divisive and illegal DEI actions, or Green New Deal, or radical gender ideology. Consistent with President Trump's workforce optimization initiatives, we've mandated that our employees return to work in office full time. Small businesses show up and get it done every day. We will honor their jobs by doing ours. Importantly, America must end its reliance on foreign supply chains from countries like China, and that's why we're getting to work on Made in America. The vast majority of our nation's manufacturers are small businesses, and so they build our economy. They keep us safe, strong, secure, and they can power that blue-collar boom that President Trump built during his first term. Now, we cannot be there for small businesses if our programs don't work, and that's why we have a zero-tolerance policy on fraud. And that includes pandemic-era fraud that could potentially total up to $200 billion, and we're going to hold criminals accountable and try to get as much of that money back into taxpayer pockets as we can. We've also banned illegal aliens and hostile foreign nationals from benefiting from SBA programs. Only American citizens will have access to our services. And I've also announced that the SBA will be moving our regional offices out of sanctuary cities and into areas that comply with federal law. We are utilizing our unique role at the SBA, working across all agencies to cut burdensome regulations and give job creators the freedom to thrive. Now, these actions are all about putting America first. Finally, we're ending voter registration activities within the SBA, reversing the previous administration's order that turned federal employees into taxpayer activists. Finally, but not least, I want to highlight the SBA's important role in disaster assistance. Our agency is on the front lines when tragedy strikes, and I saw firsthand the devastation after the hurricanes last year. We have been there for Georgians the last 160 days since September 25th, with 27 field service centers, 108 staff, delivering over $100 million in loans to nearly 3,000 Georgians. Now, we have more work to do, and we did announce today that we've extended that loan application process by 60 days. So those of you that are impacted by that, your constituents have that opportunity still. Now, we also do have 3 full-time offices in Georgia and dozens more throughout the country to get closer to Main Street. We've got to get that agency out of Washington and onto Main Street. Now, as I conclude, I can assure you Georgia is well represented in Washington. In fact, VA Secretary Doug Collins and I recently had the opportunity to co-host White House-led roundtables for our nation's governors, and that was a great experience to also have Governor Kemp there. I'm energized by this work, and I'm confident that with President Trump's leadership, this administration is going to deliver a golden age of opportunity in Georgia and across our country. So thank you so much for the great honor of being with you. Thank you for this incredible resolution. It means the world to me. And with the help of state legislatures like this one, I am confident that we are on the precipice of making Main Street great again. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.
We have a special guest here also, one of our congressional members. A lady I think needs no introduction. We are always glad to share the podium with our congressional delegation that comes in here from time to time and give us a report on what's going on in D.C. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congress Lady Marjorie Taylor Greene has been serving the people of Northwest Georgia very well, and she takes a lot of pride in making sure that their voices are heard, and she's always looking out for the constituents that she serves. So give our Congress Lady a warm welcome here.
Thank you, everyone, and I'm honored to be here with you all today. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. It was great to hear from Secretary Loeffler. We're so proud of her and excited for her work to come on behalf of small businesses, not only here in Georgia, but all over the nation. I just want to give you guys just a quick update. We're working hard in Washington. The budget is something that is definitely taking precedence. However, on the budget issue, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you that pass a balanced budget every single year. And so that's something that shouldn't be taken for granted as a proud Georgian. That makes me proud of our state when I fly up to Washington, D.C., and we face a $36 trillion deficit. That deficit should never exist. As a matter of fact, in Washington and Congress, we should have a balanced budget as well, and hopefully one day we will. On the note of spending, I'm serving as the chair of the DOGE Subcommittee on Oversight, and we are digging deeply into where federal dollars, people's hard-earned tax money, has gone. The things that we have uncovered in just a short amount of time have shocked the nation. The first hearing that I held on Medicare, we uncovered that hundreds of billions of dollars have gone to overseas criminal networks, dead people, fraud, waste, and they have largely been lost, misspent, and it's money that we'll never get back. There's changes that we can make, and I'm excited to be working with Elon Musk and the DOGE team. I'm excited to be working with my colleagues in the House and the Senate as well to put these DOGE savings into effect, because not only do people in Georgia deserve it, the entire nation deserves it. Another hearing that we had was on USAID. One of the most shocking things that was uncovered through our witnesses, our expert witnesses that came before the committee, is that Americans' hard-earned tax dollars have made their way into the hands of terrorists. and Americans have died as a result of that. No one in this country works hard and pays their taxes to see their tax dollars go into the hands of terrorists. So this is the type of important work that we're getting done, and I'm so excited to be leading the charge on it. I also want to speak with you all and very excited about the Riley Gaines Act that passed in the House. And I hope, and on behalf of women and girls sports, that we see that pass here in the Senate as well, and Governor Kemp sign that into law. Girls and women should never have to compete against biological males. That's a completely unfair advantage. So I urge you to please pass that bill. I don't think it's
We
come.
already passed it.
Oh.
We're waiting on the House.
Oh, okay. Opposite. All right, I'm going to turn that around. Thank you. And congratulations. Well done, Georgia Senate. Yes, well done. Thank you for correcting me. Sorry, I had that one backwards. Wow, I should need to go back over there then. You guys are getting it done. Well, I think it's fantastic. I won't take up any more of your time. I know you have a lot of important work to do. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or my office if I can be of any help to any of you. And thank you again. You make me proud as a Georgian. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Congress Lady Green. I reminded her after we stepped off that anything that's conservative and you know, pro-business, pro-family, and everything else, it starts here. So, you know, but they're coming along. They're coming along over there. We'll get them there. So. We have another special group here that we're glad to have with us here, the 6888 Central Postal Directory, SR 212. Secretary, read the caption, please.
Senate Resolution 212 by Senator James of the 28th and others, a resolution honoring the legacy of the 6888th Central Postal Directory Battalion and for other purposes. Whereas the 6888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, nicknamed the 6888, was an all-black battalion in the United States Women's Army Corps that managed postal services from 1945 to 1946, and was led by Major Charity Adams. The battalion consisted of 855 women and was the only predominantly black United States Women's Army Corps unit sent overseas during World War II. And whereas the women of the 6888 worked around the clock to sort and deliver packages and letters to soldiers, creating and maintaining their own card index system in order to properly identify the large quantities of mail. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body honor the resilience, efficiency, and determination of the women of the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion and extend the most sincere gratitude for their distinguished service. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I recognize the senator from the 35th to speak to the measure.
Jason, don't get upset. I know I'm the 28th now and you're the 35th, but I still claim the 35th. Hello, my colleagues. Good morning. I have the privilege of bringing for the first day of Women's Month, Women's History Month, we're going to take a moment to honor the incredible women who paved the way for future generations. One of the most inspiring stories come from the 6888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, which was a remarkable group of women who served during World War II. And they're nicknamed the 6888. It's a movie now that is playing about these remarkable women. They were brave and they were dedicated African-American women who overcame immense challenges and played a critical role in ensuring that the mail reached our soldiers overseas. Their courage, resilience, and strength are an essential part of our history and of today and our legacy. We have women who serve with us who are have been a part of the Army, and some of them are still serving. And so we have two right here with us, and I would like to call on the senator from the 43rd, who are you still serving? Okay, retired. And then we have our Major Wicks right here, who senator from the 34th. Yeah, and then call on the family.
So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator from the 28th. It is an honor to have served in the United States Armed Forces, which is the Air Force, my choice of branch. I have to say that these women definitely have paved the way. They were the first and only all-black battalion that served in World War II. And despite the sexual and racial discrimination they faced, they were efficiently and effectively clearing backlogs in our mail. And we know, as having served, that when the mail comes, it is a symbol of communication from our families. And sometimes there were not just letters, but cakes and cookies and all the good stuff that we missed from being at home. But it was necessary for these women to be in place, even when there were challenges. 855 of them, to be exact. They served in the United States Women's Army Corps unit, which was overseas during World War II. And of course, as the senator from the 28th said, the brilliance of Tyler Perry in December 2024 wrote, directed, and produced a Netflix titled The 6888, bringing light to the often underrepresented stories of this battalion. Thank you so much, Senator from the 28th, for this opportunity.
And also being a 30-year Army veteran, I also was a postal officer. So thank you, Senator James, for bringing this recognition to the 6888 Postal Battalion. Thank you.
And we're very blessed. We could not have one of the 6888 with us. The only two that are still living is one that is 104 and one that's 108. But we have the relative, the granddaughter of our PFC, Hester Gibbons Massey, born in Culpeth, Georgia, on August 18th, 1919. And Hester served as a dedicated nurse in the 6888 Women's Army Corps from 43 to 1946. And she continued her service in Normandy, France after the war. She continued to serve her community by working at the Veterans Hospital in East Orange, New Jersey for 10 years before retiring in 1977, and she died in 1996. Here's her granddaughter and family, and we're going to hold up the pictures of this woman. And she was so great in that unit, in that battalion, that the Tyler Perry story that we talked about that is playing on networks, for, what is it, Netflix? I don't look at it, you see, but I did look at that particular one. Right now, she was the number 2 leading role there. One. Where's your picture?
On behalf of the Massey Kennedy family, and there's also a Massey Churchwell family, Here today, I'm the granddaughter of Private First Class Hester Givens. I have her great-grandchildren and her great-great-grandchild, who you can't see above here. We just want to thank you all for recognizing her with the proclamation, and we just want to thank Tyler Perry for showing the world about the first black women in the military. After they did their tour, which paved the way for many other black women to be in the military, so we're truly grateful for their service and their heroic acts and the things they went through with the war. And just a note that my grandmother also met my grandfather in Normandy, France, and they met and then moved to New Jersey and then had my dad. So, but just thank you so much. We're so honored to be here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've got several presentations here today. So, Secretary, read the caption, please.
Senate Resolution 65 by Senator McLaurin of the 14th and others, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Allison Adasa Fotheringham and for other purposes. Whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of one of its most distinguished citizens with the passing of Allison Adasa Fotheringham on January 10th, 2025. And whereas Allison Adasa Fotheringham was born on March 1st, 1925 in James Hill, Clarendon, Jamaica, a beloved daughter of Alfred and Louise Richards. And where she dedicated 51 years of superlative service to her exemplary teaching career, which culminated in her final role as the director of the GEDHS program at the Fulton Atlanta Community Action Authority in Atlanta, Georgia. And was a woman of deep and abiding faith, she was an active member of the Episcopal Church and of the Holy Cross. And whereas she was united in love and marriage to her husband Noel, and was blessed with 5 remarkable children, 6 wonderful grandchildren, and 2 outstanding great-grandchildren. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body join in honoring the life and memory of Allison Adasa Fotheringham and express their deepest and most sincere regret at her passing. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Recognize the senator from the 14th to speak to the special presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it is my distinct honor to introduce the family of a constituent of mine who recently passed. The name of my constituent was Allison Adasa Fotheringham, and she was a beloved mother and grandmother and great-grandmother, and she was a teacher for 51 years, serving in various capacities in Fulton County, I think for the Board of Education, also the Fulton Atlanta Community Action Authority. She was one of the first graduating class of Clarendon College in Jamaica, and later earned a master's degree in education from Western Carolina University in 1977. Folks, her 100th birthday would have been March 1st, 2025. Unfortunately, she passed on January 10th. We were going to celebrate her 100th birthday here for Black History Month and in celebration of an outstanding citizen, but she passed in the meantime. But I've spoke with her family, and she is still here, and she is enjoying this celebration today. I don't want to steal her daughter Joan's thunder, but she was often said to be hanging on like Jimmy Carter was near the end, and I believe it was just a day after Jimmy Carter passed, she also passed. So her family is remarkable. I've really enjoyed having them here as guests today. Her daughters, Joan and Monica, and her son, Drew, and a dear family friend, Chris, are all here to pay respects and honor their loved ones. So without further ado, I'll give the microphone over to her daughter, Joan. Please help me welcome them.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Senator McLaurin said, my name is Joan, but for today I'm Joan Allison Fotheringham. And I don't often use my middle name, but today is one of those days that I say it because I say it with such pride. I'm carrying my mom's name, and I am absolutely representing all of my family here today, but especially because I have her name, I feel extremely privileged to accept this resolution today on my family's behalf. My mom was, as Senator McLaurin said, would have turned 100 just this past Saturday, so my family is reeling, with emotions, knowing that she almost made it here, but I can confidently convey to you that she knew that she was likely going to be honored, and she gave 3 wows. So I'm here to give you 3 wows today that came from my mom, and she was absolutely hoping to be here and said that it was really validation of her achievements. And some of those achievements included her tenure at the Fulton Atlanta Community Action Authority, where she worked for approximately 7 years and influenced the lives of many of the young Georgians who went on to get their high school diplomas. And she considers it their GD, and she considers it the pinnacle of her 51-year teaching career. But I'm here to tell you that although my mom lived a long life, it was not just the length of her life, but the breadth of her life. She was an absolutely amazing individual. As I said at her celebration of life, she was absolutely indescribable. It's too much for me to condense into 2 minutes. But she was simply amazing, and it's my absolute honor, I'm accepting this on behalf of my family members who are here local, but there is an audience in both domestic and international, including her students, who are participating virtually as well and would have loved to see my mom in person. You would have loved her, but we will cherish her memories, and I thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to acknowledge Senator McLaurin. Thank you so much for authoring the resolution. I'd also like to acknowledge the co-authors. My mom would have really been humbled, especially since it was truly bipartisan. And I'd like to really thank as well Governor Jones. Thank you so much. So on behalf of my family, again, thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.
This will be our final presentation for the day. Then we'll get started on everything else. So, Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 324 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, a resolution honoring and commending the Kingdom of Denmark and honorary Consul Christopher N. Smith, Knight of the Order of the Dannebrog First Class, and for other purposes. Whereas established in 1802 in Georgia, the Royal Danish Consulate is one of the oldest foreign missions in the state, and whereas the economic relationship between the Kingdom of Denmark and the state of Georgia supports over 4,200 jobs in the state of Georgia, with over 60 Danish companies having offices in the state, and whereas the state of Georgia ranks 6th among the United States in exports to the Kingdom of Denmark. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body honor the Kingdom of Denmark, promote economic development, trade, and culture exchanges between the state of Georgia and the Kingdom of Denmark, and commend the Honorable Christopher N. Smith, Honorary Consul of the Kingdom of Denmark and the state of Georgia. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. All right. Senator from the 20th will speak to the special presentation.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm honored to be here today with you and joining our pro tem as we welcome the Honorary Consul for Denmark. The Honorable Christopher Smith is with us today. Christopher we met in elementary school and have been friends ever since. He works tirelessly for Denmark, traveling all over the state of Georgia, all over the country, and in fact all over the world. Promoting ties with Denmark, economic development in Georgia, and a long-standing relationship. Denmark actually established in 1802 a Royal Danish Consulate in Georgia, so we've had a long, long time good relations with Denmark. Denmark supports over 4,200 jobs in the state of Georgia, and we're the 6th state in the nation as far as trade with Denmark. So I'm proud to have Christopher with us today. We communicate mostly through social media, and I'm learning more and more how many cities in Georgia are named for cities and communities in Denmark. We actually have a Denmark, Georgia, which I did not know until recently, Ryan, Georgia. But it's great to have him with me today. In elementary school, I'm sure he would have never believed I would have been a state senator, and I would have never believed he'd have been a knight. So anyway, I give you my friend, the Honorable Christopher Smith.
All right. Thank you so much. Lieutenant Governor Jones, esteemed members of the Senate, on behalf of His Majesty's government, please let me bring you greetings on behalf of the people of the Kingdom of Denmark. As Senator Walker said, established in 1802, it is the oldest consulate in the state of Georgia. Georgia's grown. We have 75 nations represented here. We like to say we're kind of like the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. In addition to the strong business ties which Senator Walker spoke to, there are also strong military ties between Georgia and Denmark. In fact, just recently, there was a joint operation between Danish and American forces in Greenland where we maintain a Space Force base. The United States has had a presence there in Greenland since World War II continuously, and it's part of the NORAD defense mechanism that we have. Along those lines, when you see an F-35 or F-16 flying overhead, they have Danish radar. And their headquarters is in Warner Robins, Georgia, of that company, and they also have a research and development center in Smyrna, Georgia, among other things. Now, I wanted to say this about Denmark. It's easy to get there. Starting last year, we began a direct flight from Atlanta to Copenhagen on SAS Airlines. So we would invite everyone to visit the whole Danish realm, including Greenland and the Faroe Islands. You'll be able to get to Greenland starting in this summer from a flight from Newark. Lastly, I just wanted to say it was Dutch Day at the Capitol, and I commend our Dutch colleagues. But this is the flag of Denmark, and the capital is Copenhagen, and it's not Swiss. And these, while I'm here, is the flag of the Faroe Islands, which is part of the realm, and Greenland. And last but not least, if you remember nothing else, I'm the guy that bought cookies. Okay, for everyone. They're not just for Christmas. So enjoy some Danish butter cookies, and thank you for your time very much.
All right, good job, good job, good job. Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? I thought we were going to get out of here without any points of personal privilege. Come on, Mr. Chairman. We all wonder to know what's on your mind today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to announce that the Taiwan Caucus is hosting, actually, the Director General down in room 230. And for members, there's some bubble tea down there for you. So y'all go down and say hello to DG Wong. Thank you.
You have before you a consent calendar of privilege resolutions. Does any senator wish to remove resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the resolution on the consent calendar is adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? Is there objection to agreeing to the report? You have before you a consent calendar of local bills. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections to any of the local bills?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee on the state and local governmental operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bill on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bill on the local consent calendars. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill having received on the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate engross SB 31 and SB 175.
The senators move for engrossment. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 31 by Senator Dolzall, the 27th, and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7, Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to income taxes so as to exempt from taxation all income received as retirement benefits derived from service in the armed forces of the United States or the reserve components thereof, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date and applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Senate Bill 175 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 2 of the Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to general provisions regarding elections and primaries so as to prohibit the use of ranked choice voting, to provide for certain exceptions, to provide for a definition, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Does the majority leader wish to speak on your motion? Would you like to speak? You would like to speak. All right. All right. I recognize the senator from the 14th. Speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just want consistency as a minority party. That's all we want. If it's always elections bills and tax bills, that's one thing, but we've been engrossing a lot of other stuff around here. We might be engrossing more stuff, Mr. President, as the hours go late and the days go on. And plus, I've got Donald Trump amendments I want to do for both of these bills, and if you don't give me the opportunity, I'll have to put it on something else. So thank you, Mr. Leader, and I understand, but we just want a little ideological consistency around here. Thank you, Mr. President.
All righty. Thank you, Senator. Would the majority leader like to speak to his motions, or just going to keep moving? All right. So majority leader has made a motion on engrossment of Senate Bill 31 and Senate Bill 175. There is objection, so all those in favor of the majority leader's motion will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion for engrossment, the yeas are 33 and the nays are 23, and this motion has prevailed. Moving on to the rules calendar, SB 20. Secretary, read the quick caption.
Senate Bill 20 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to scholarships, loans, and grants so as to provide for student loan repayment for veterinarians who practice shelter medicine and veterinarians who practice in nonprofit pet sterilization clinics, to create the State Veterinary Education Board for shelter medicine and pet sterilization, to provide for definitions, to provide for requirements for participation in the loan repayment program, to provide for maximum total and annual repayment amounts, to provide for terms for repayment agreements, to provide for rules and regulations, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hickman, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education offers the following substitutes to Senate Bill 20, bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to scholarships, loans, and grants so as to provide for the purchase of loans made for students for educational purposes, for veterinarians who practice shelter medicine, and veterinarians who practice in nonprofit pet sterilization clinics, to provide for the appointment of additional members to the State Veterinary Education Board, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 32nd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate engross SB 21 and SB 175. The Senate Bill 21 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to scholarships, loans, and grants so as to provide for the purchase of loans made for students for educational purposes, for veterinarians who practice in nonprofit pet sterilization clinics, to provide for the appointment of additional members to the State Veterinary Education Board, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 32nd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is intended to help reduce the backlog of low-cost spay and neuter procedures across the state by adding shelter vets to the existing loan program in the Department of Agriculture. It incentivizes vets specializing in this area to serve in exchange for 3 years of designated practice without adding an additional board. The awards are subject to appropriations with a total of 4 awards the first year. I've worked with the Department of Agriculture, the Georgia Veterinary Medical Association, and the Georgia Veterinary Board on this bill. I especially appreciate the help of the Commissioner of Agriculture to help with this important public health and safety issue. Your constituents who care about animals, especially those who work with rescues, care about this bill. I ask for your favorable consideration, and if there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objections to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee's substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agree to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea, nay. Those are against, nay. Thank you. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54 and the nays are 2. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, please read Senate Bill 31.
Senate Bill 31 by Senator Dolzall of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to income taxes so as to exempt from taxation all income received as retirement benefits derived from service in the armed forces of the United States or the reserve components thereof, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date and applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffelseller of the 52nd District, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 27th. It's been a busy man for you this session.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring before you Senate Bill 31. Currently, Georgia is one of 12 states in America that levies an income tax on military retirement income. And we do have some, basically a cascading scale of exemptions currently, but we do have a tax on military retirement income. None of our neighboring states do. We're the only state in the Southeast that does. And this bill would eliminate the state income tax on all military retirement income. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions. If there are none, I yield the will.
Senator, you have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary reads Senate Bill 46.
Senate Bill 46 by Senator Harbin and the 16th and others, bill to be entitled Act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, related to general provisions relative to state government so as to improve government service delivery in the state, to provide for the appointment of a State of Georgia Government Service Delivery Lead within Georgia Technology Authority to coordinate such efforts, to establish the powers and duties of such individual, to establish the heads of each state agency as responsible for the government service delivery of their agency and provide for related powers and duties, to provide for annual reporting, to provide for definitions, to provide for a short title, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Government Oversight recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbin, Chairman. And Mr. President, a fiscal note has been attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 16th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. SB 46 is government serves the people. One of the things that government doesn't have, it doesn't have a bottom line. And how do we measure the success of government from that standpoint? This bill is to require some things to occur within our government to hold what I'll call best practices. In today's digital world, businesses engage customers seamlessly through online platforms, yet state agencies still use outdated paper systems and frustrate citizens. Georgia must modernize government services to match the efficiencies responsive to the private sector. States like Utah, Iowa, Missouri have successfully reformed their service models, demonstrating innovation leads to better governance. Georgia is the home to Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, Home Depot, and UPS, and Delta Airlines. And we've learned from these businesses that recognizing the customer and where the customer is is not just delivering a good product, but it's also meeting the needs of that person. The aim of SB 46 is to bring into a mindset the same mindset into government. Improving service delivery is no longer optional. It's a core responsibility of government. This legislation focuses on listening to stakeholders and listening to their feedback and holding a best practices for all agencies. For instance, would be how long do you have to wait on hold? How long does it take to have a response from an agency? And what would happen is this: under SB 46, the state coordinator will be the state government service delivery lead. It's part of Georgia Technology Authority, and they will be the quarterback that quarterbacks what's going on. They will oversee it because of their technology background and bring that together. Then each of the departments, each state agency will recognize a senior official in that agency that will be responsible for that agency, whether that's Department of Revenue, whatever the department may be. And then annually there will be a report given to the governor and the General Assembly that would be presented so that you could judge what needs help. Maybe there's a department that's not returning phone calls, or maybe the hold time is 2.5 hours. This way we at least have a measurement by which we can measure each of these. The agencies will benchmark themselves and measure the citizens' experience. The bill does not mandate anybody hire anybody additional, though GTA may need that. There is also a fiscal note attached to the bill. The federal government has already taken similar steps. Congressman Barry Loudermilk supports Government Service Delivery Implementation Act that he did, requiring that the Office of Management Budget to require nationwide service enhancements. Georgia now has that same opportunity. I would ask that you would do this, that you would say yes to this bill. It's the first step we have that affects both Democrats and Republicans equally. Each of us always get calls for government services, and this bill allows that to occur by having self-regulation of the departments through the Georgia GTA. And with that, Mr. President, any questions?
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objections to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The Board of Committees agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 4. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Secretary read SB 30.
Senate Bill 30 by Senator Watson the first and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 31 and Article 1 of Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to regulation of hospitals and related institutions and the Georgia Composite Medical Board, respectively, so as to prohibit prescribing or administering certain hormone therapies and puberty-blocking medications for certain purposes to minors, to provide for definitions, to provide for limited exceptions, to provide for a remedy for a parent or guardian of a minor, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson, Chairman. Mr. President, a minority report to Senate Bill 30 has been attached, and that completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the Senator from the first.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 years ago, this body passed Senate Bill 140. The senator from the 13th was a sponsor, and I was one of the co-sponsors. That bill outlawed sex change hormones and also outlawed surgeries for minors who have gender dysphoria. This bill is the same bill that we passed last year, Senate Bill 30, and it outlaws puberty blockers for minors. Specifically in gender dysphoria, where hospitals or physicians do this, 2 separate sections, 2 different sets of penalties if you do. That's basically what it does. It outlaws puberty blockers for minors with gender dysphoria. It does not keep them from getting any kind of mental health counseling or anything like that. Mr. President, that's all it does, and with that, I'll yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 44th, you want to speak to the bill? Recognize the Senator from the 44th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of Amendment 1, which would permit youth that are currently on puberty-blocking medications to be able to continue with those medications, and instead of having to be summarily removed, which obviously could cause a problem for their health and certainly consternation for them, their families, and maybe even make them consider leaving our state. And I think it would be fair to allow families that are already on these, because puberty blockers were not included in our bill from a few years ago. We decided at that point to continue having them be available to families and youth. So now to go back and undo that, I think, causes harm to some families that were relying on that. And so I would urge your support for Amendment 1. I also want to, though, speak for just a moment to the bill, which I am in opposition to the underlying bill. I think that banning puberty blockers for youth that are struggling with gender dysphoria, with no regard to the particular circumstances that a child or a family may be going through, is not just bad policy, but it in fact is government overreach into very personal medical decisions that should be made by families and doctors and not by politicians. The truth is, puberty blockers have been used safely for decades to treat various medical conditions, including precocious puberty. These medications work by temporarily pausing puberty, which gives youth that are struggling with their gender identity and their families more time to make informed decisions about their future. Importantly, these blockers are fully reversible, meaning that if and when a child discontinues treatment, their natural course of puberty will resume. For these reasons, many medical experts, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association, do support the use of puberty blockers in certain situations for transgender youth when it is clinically appropriate. Denying access to these treatments does not protect children. It actually puts them more in harm's way. Research consistently has shown that transgender youth who are unable to access gender-affirming care face significantly higher risks of depression, anxiety, and suicide. And those, in contrast, that are receiving appropriate care, both medical and mental health, they have better outcomes and improved quality of life. I find it ironic that the party that often claims to stand for parents' rights, the Republican Party, is insisting on telling parents that they cannot make these critical medical decisions for their own children. Many of the same politicians who claim that they fight against government interference in healthcare options now want to stand in the way of personal, familial, and medical conversations with other people's families, with other people's children. It should be that parents, working alongside trained medical professionals, have the right to decide what is best for their child's health and not the government. Denying, as I fear that many in our current political environment want to do, denying that gender dysphoria exists by removing access to hormone therapy that is known to be effective and safe will destroy parents' efforts to help their children navigate what is already a very difficult challenge. And this bill offers no solutions. It just makes it harder for parents and doctors to support their children. Georgia should stand for parental rights, medical freedom, and above all, the well-being of our youth. So therefore, I urge you to vote for Amendment 1. But still, consider voting no on the underlying bill, SB 30, to recognize that these parents and doctors are all pursuing the same opportunity that we all want for each of our own children, which is to live happy, healthy, and productive lives. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer questions, and if there are none, I'll yield the will.
I think the people who are listed, I think they want to come up and speak, so you have no questions, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
All right, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so right now I call on you, Senator. Please read the amendment, Secretary.
Mr. President, Senator Parent of the 44th and Senator Jackson of the 41st offer the following amendment number 1 to amend Senate Bill 30 by replacing lines 119 through 122 with the following. Abnormalities resulting in ambiguity regarding the individual's striking biological sex. Striking 2, inserting 2 in treatments for individuals with partial androgen sensitivity syndrome, striking and 4, inserting 3 continued treatments of minors who are, prior to July 1st, 2023, being treated with irreversible hormone replacement therapies, inserting and 4, continued treatment of minors who are, prior to July 1st, 2025, being treated with puberty blocking medications. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the Senator from the 7th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this bill. Colleagues, SB 30 is not about protecting children. It's about controlling them. It's about stripping transgender youth of their right to health care and criminalizing the doctors who provide it. The science is clear. Puberty blockers are safe, effective, and life-saving for kids experiencing gender dysphoria. They give young people time to understand themselves. They reduce depression and suicidality. They're supported by every major medical organization in this country. But the Republican majority doesn't care about science, it seems. They care about scoring points with a far-right base that thrives on fear and misinformation. They claim puberty blockers are irreversible. That's not true. They claim children are being rushed into medical decision. That's not true. They claim this bill protects kids, but what it really does is put them in danger. Let's be honest, this is not about health care. We don't ban male circumcision. We don't ban unproven alternative medicines. We don't ban genetic testing on newborns even though they can't consent. The difference, those procedures don't involve transgender kids. This bill targets a vulnerable group simply because some people don't like that they exist. 16 years ago, Republicans screamed about medical freedom when they opposed the Affordable Care Act. 5 years ago, they cried government overreach when asked to wear a mask. But today, they are silent as they strip Georgia's trans kids of the right to see their own doctor. This bill is cruel, it is unnecessary, and it is dangerous. And I urge my colleagues to reject this attack on Georgia's transgender youth before we have blood on our hands. I yield the well.
Recognize the senator from the 1st. Oh, you want to close? Okay, I'm sorry. Senator from the 41st, are you doing the minority report? All right, so we have Senator from the 36th. Would you like to speak to the bill? We'll let the Senator from the 36th speak to the bill first. And then Senator from the 41st, you'll be up next.
Mr. President. Well, colleagues, here we go again. Let's do another bill that attempts to marginalize the trans community. Let's beat up on them one more time. Or wait, are there some more bills coming our way after this one? Who's keeping the clock on how much time has been spent on beating up and marginalizing trans kids and trans adults? Anybody got a clock on that one? Because it surely is not what the voters of Georgia sent us down here to do. Not at all. But if you find it fair sport to take a tiny minority population within this state and create a firestorm about how dreadful the behaviors of these transgender children or children are questioning their gender identity and their families, is that really a priority for Georgia voters? I'm not seeing any polls that indicate that. Have y'all polled on that? No, this is an effort to divide, to marginalize, to point to the other, and create an artifice of an issue that's crying out for attention when in fact that's not the case. There's a lot of lack of understanding around the whole issue of transgendered people, both minors and adults. And it's understandable in the sense because it's been felt so unsafe to have public discussions about it that are informative and balanced. And just as years ago, we could write a history of the populations that have been picked out and marginalized and attacked and whipped up on. It's seems to be a time-honored tradition to pick an other and then proceed to stomp over their rights, to discriminate against them, to marginalize them, and it's a shame, really. It's a crying shame. I represent families who are coping with this reality in their family. They're not asking the Georgia General Assembly or the governor to get involved. They are working with their children, or they're working as adults with medical professionals who are skilled in addressing the issues that they are facing. And that's how it should be between a patient and their doctor. And we had doctors come before the committee and testify about how important it is to be able to provide services to this population. Totally ignored, party line vote. Let's get busy marginalizing and creating a crisis that's not a crisis, artificially picking this out as the thing that we should be spending time on. We shouldn't have to be in the well on this. Let the family that's impacted by it be in the medical consultation with professional medical people who are trained in this field. And not a one of us in here meets that qualification, in my opinion. So I'm recommending a do not pass. And I find it also strange that the people in this room that are going to vote for this bill are absolutely comfortable dismissing most major American medical organizations that support the use of puberty blockers, including the American Medical Association. Just knock them aside, kick them aside. What do they mean? What do they know? I venture to say a whole lot more than those of us that are fixing to cast a vote about this. If you want to continue pandering and continuing to pick out a population and continue to try to marginalize them, go on your merry way. But history will catch up with you. History will catch up with you, and it might be soon. It might be later. But I was in this General Assembly when they were hooping and hollering about same-sex marriage. Oh, good God, the devil was among us. And you just couldn't hear enough about it. And that we got to make marriage between a man and a woman, period, paragraph. Anybody outside of those parameters, you're the other. You're the marginalized population. And you know, today people have really broadened their understanding of the LGBTQ community. And of realities that you might not have known about. Your life experience didn't serve up that understanding to you. But now there's a broad understanding that same-sex marriage is an appropriate choice, a good choice, a positive place to raise children, and stop interfering with love. And I would say in this case, we're way out of, across the parameters of interfering with the family, their child, and their doctor They don't want us in the doctor's office. You come and let us know. Come on up to the well and tell your experience of people inviting you as a politician into the doctor's office. I think that's uncommon. Certainly not in my experience. But I have families in my district who come to me, and they come out there and ask you all to come out to the ropes and talk to them. Listen to them, learn from them. Never too old to learn. Never too old to learn. But in this case, we're too busy demonizing to seek to educate ourselves. I would ask you to take a second look at this and decide whether or not you're comfortable voting for a bill that is seeking to address an artificially manufactured crisis, which is a non-crisis, while at the same time, we could be spending all this time on figuring out how to house all these people that can't afford the rent that it's in the housing market today, and that are couch surfing or living in a car, going to shelters, unable to find affordable housing. That would be a very fruitful bipartisan path that we could take, as opposed to continuing to bring bills like this. I'm voting against this, and it's a vote that I can feel good about, go home and talk about, put it in my newsletter, get on Lawmakers, don't have to hide my face, and I urge you to join those of us that are going to oppose Senate Bill 30, which is a straight-up interference between a person's and a family's relationship with their doctor and the medical decisions that are their business, not ours. If there are any questions, I'll yield for questions. If not, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator, before we get to the final, the minority report as well, and then the author's closing statement, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Okay. Recognize the senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in a bit of a fog of deja vu. Haven't we been here before? We've banned gender-affirming surgeries for minors. We've passed legislation banning gender-affirming care for everyone on the state health plan. We've passed bills banning transgender children from playing on the sports teams that they would be most comfortable on. This body has promulgated bill after bill attacking trans people with the ultimate goal of making trans folks disappear. We've been here before. The othering of a minority group for political gain, the banning of medical help for vulnerable communities because men in power think that they know what's best for everyone else. The fear-mongering and the scapegoating, the scare tactics, we've been here before. Now, some of you all will say, come on, don't take this personally, Senator, but I want to be clear, this bill is personal. I am a lesbian, a member of the LGBT community, and trans people are my people. This is my community. Kids I know by name, kids I love, adults who are my people, my family. This bill is personal. And since the beginning of time, the LGBT community has been othered. We've been singled out in silence, relentlessly attacked time and time again. First, it started with it being illegal to just be gay in the first place. Then it was illegal to be gay and married. Then it was illegal to be gay and to have children that you adopted. We were denied visitation rights for our partners when they were in hospital and Social Security benefits for when they died. The LGBTQ community is no stranger to ridicule and judgment. We know this script. We've been here before. The majority party has stripped the rights of parents and doctors to decide what is best for their children's mental health. Republicans have stripped adults and children alike of the dignity of finding ways to address gender dysphoria. And now this body alleges that it's for their safety that we stop teens from continuing the treatments that doctors and parents have agreed will help them feel at peace in their bodies. But today, the senator from the 44th and I, we offer you all an opportunity to slow down some of the senseless attacks on my community with Amendment number 1. Amendment number 1 will allow for children who are currently under the care of a physician to continue the hormone therapy that they've already started. If you were to adopt this amendment, you would allow children who are on puberty blockers to continue their treatment, and we could protect the lives of dozens of Georgia children. Because we know if their treatment plan is reversed mid-cycle, the results, the pain that it would cause could be lethal. But you already know this because we've been here before. But imagine with me, imagine for a moment what it will be like for a transgender girl who has been socially accepted as a girl since she was a small child to wake up tomorrow and to be told that she has to stop taking the hormones that have helped her live a healthy life. That the years of therapy and psychiatry and consulting with doctors, all who have decided that hormone therapy is the safest way to keep her alive, well, it'll now be reversed. She will be forced to go through male puberty without the hormone therapy that has saved her. Her body and voice will be thrown into disarray after years of carefully thought out medical treatment. Imagine having to walk into school, facing friends and classmates who have only known you as a girl their entire lives. And then to walk into the school in a different body and having to face the ridicule and judgment and stares. It is absolutely heartbreaking to know that these kids will be forced to face this type of treatment in their lives. Their precious little bodies already complicated, but at this point they are headed in the right direction of hope and acceptance. But if we pass this bill, kids' lives will be destroyed because the men in this body have decided that they need to control every aspect of those kids' body. But know this. Despite the constant attempts of this General Assembly to erase an entire people, I want you to know that trans people will not disappear. They will not slink silently away so that you don't have to feel discomfort at their difference. They will not hide in fear from those who are in power. In fact, there will come a day when trans people and queer folks and formerly incarcerated folks and all the other folks that Republicans have decided are useless, there will come a day. There will come a day when they will all sit in seats of power at this table fighting for the rights of all Georgians. And how do I know this? How do I know? I know this because the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Social evolution and forward progress cannot be stopped. The table of democracy will continue to lengthen and open its arms to more and more of humanity, just as the table has already expanded over time to include women and black people. Y'all, this feels like the deja vu just continues because this cycle continues over and over of people in power trying to control the vulnerable people and trying to break us. But just as that cycle has failed to break us before, it won't break us now. I will continue to talk till I'm blue in the face about the scientifically proven suicidal risk of trans youth who are forced to stop their hormone therapy. I will talk about the incredible danger to their mental health because of this legislation and so many other bills like it. And I can talk about the fear of the parents, the fear that they face because they know that there's a solution to their child's pain, but they're not allowed to use it. I will continue to speak up for the vulnerable, the outcast, the least, and the lost until those in power decide to break this vicious cycle. My colleagues, today I am asking you to vote yes on the amendment and to take a small step in breaking the cycle of abuse that impacts my community. I'm asking you today to stand up for what you know in your heart of hearts is the compassionate thing to do for children. I'm inviting you to be courageous and interrupt this dangerous cycle of stripping away vulnerable communities of their God-given rights to exist in their truest form. Friends, I could stay here for a long time, but you already know in your heart of hearts what's right. I just ask that you show some courage. I yield the well.
The senator has yielded the well, and she was doing the minority report, and so now I recognize the senator, the author of the bill, the senator from the first, to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. This does just one thing. You cannot give puberty blockers to minors. That's all it does. This is an issue in which several hyperboles have been said, but let's just address a few. Puberty blockers are without side effects. Well, let me just pull out on Hippocrates. Just a few of the puberty blockers here. Serious reactions: hypersensitivity, anaphylaxis, severe cutaneous reactions, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, toxic epidermal necrolysis, drug reaction with eosinophilia, systemic symptoms, acute generalized xanthus pustulosis, hepatotoxicity, bone density loss, suicidality. Yes, adverse reaction, increased risk of suicides. Do you hear any of that? That is true. Not to mention stroke, heart attack, bad rhythms to your heart. The list is about 17 long. Common reactions, those were the adverse reactions. Common reactions: hot flashes, diaphoresis, that's sweating, tumor flares, headache, sleep disturbance, pain, depression, emotional lability, edema, constipation, and diarrhea. And the list, that's just half the list. So to say that it has no side effects, ridiculous. It is now outlawed in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and UK. Yes, the moral arc has swung. It swung way too far. It is swinging back to what's right. Goodness, when you can't talk about the facts related to this, you talk about other things, right? Lives destroyed, affordable housing, LGBTQ. I mean, goodness gracious. This is on minors with gender dysphoria. This bill has nothing to do with taking away the mental health treatment for gender dysphoria. It is not criminalization relating to that. Not criminalization. It takes away the physician's license if he does it. To hospitals, they lose their license if they do it. There is no good evidence-based medicine to support this. A great review article in the British Medical Journal, let me refer you to that. No good evidence to support puberty blockers, surgery, or sex change hormones in minors. You got to remember, listen, I certainly have empathy in parents and children in this situation. The frontal lobes are not fully developed until you're about 25 and 26. And here we are asking them to make a decision that changes their bone structure, that changes multiple things of their body. You're asking them to make changes that will have changes for the rest of their lives. It is not a fair decision to them. It is not a fair decision to the parents. And yes, privately, I have parents come to me all the time, multiple times, and tell me, wow, I wish this had been law when my child went through this. That is a profound statement, not to be taken lightly. And I think this body should support not using drugs that will have significant side effects in minors. Yes, we are here to protect minors. That is part of what we do. We don't allow minors to do lots of things. Smoke cigarettes. Oh my goodness, surprise. Get tattoos. Oh my goodness, big surprise. So, I don't, being higher than us related to this is just totally misleading. The amendment, I think, offers nothing. Puberty blockers usually have about a 3-month time frame. It takes about 3 to 6 months after that for puberty to be onset. Sometimes it can take up to a year or two. So it is a slow process relating to that. The side effects that I touched on are there with the puberty blockers and without the puberty blockers. What doing away with the puberty blockers does, it allows the child to go through a normal, natural process of puberty. Imagine that, puberty. It is not an easy thing to go through. We've all been there. But having said that, it is a normal and natural aspect to life. Mr. President, having said that, I would ask you to vote for the bill and vote down on the amendment. Thank you. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator has closed debate. We are going to take up amendment number 1. Amendment number 1 authored by the senator from the 44th. Is there objection to amendment number 1? There is objection. All those in favor of amendment number 1 will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 20, the nays are 34, and this amendment has failed. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34 and the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary, read the message from the House.
The following message was received from the House through Mr. Riley, the clerk thereof. Mr. President, the House has agreed to the Senate substitute as amended by the House to the following bill of the House. House Bill 67 by Representative Burns, the 159th, and others. Bill to intend an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025, known as the General Appropriations Act, Act Number 709, approved May 7th, 2024, so as to make, provide, and change certain appropriations for the operation of state government and its departments, boards, bureaus, commissions, institutions, and other agencies for the university system, common schools, counties, municipalities, and political subdivisions, for all other governmental activities, projects, and undertakings authorized by law, and for all leases, contracts, agreements, and grants authorized by law, to provide for control and administration of funds, to provide for an effective date to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 19th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 67.
The senator has moved that the Senate agree to House Bill 67. Is there objection? All right. Recognize senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. House Bill 67 came over here as the House's amended budget. The Senate amended that earlier this week. You passed it on a vote of 55-1. It's back over at the House. The House made a few changes to talk about I can present to you now, mainly related to some requests from the second floor. The governor's office asked that we include some additional spending at the Department of Corrections, the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Community Supervision. In order to make those moves, you have to clear up other space because there is no additional money added on a revenue estimate. The request was that we pare back slightly our storm package, which we did. We pared back our monies going to the governor's emergency fund from $82 million to $50 million. Based upon the storm now eclipsing the $2 billion mark, that probably still should be sufficient. Once a storm clears the $2 billion mark at the federal level, the feds cover it at a 90-10 ratio. So the 75-25 ratio, the 90-10 ratio, the dollars actually wipe out at about that $50 million mark, a little bit lower, so we're covered there. We also had to pare back our ag and timber spending from $200 million to $185 million. That's still above the request that we've had to date, so we should be fine there. We had to fine-tune a few numbers. You know that we worked on doing paying the provider fee for hospitals in the rural hospitals in the storm damage area. We had to tune that number up. We didn't include a few, and then upon review realized we needed to add a few in. And the same at FQHCs. The House plussed up a few items. They were able to move their dollars around, which they can do when we're in an amended posture. They plussed up their dollars to the COVID-19 indemnity fund. They also plussed up their numbers to the funds that had been requested by the Georgia Municipal Association for a Downtown Development Authority loan seed money program. The House also took and moved around a little bit of their money in the bond package. It now creates funding for Savannah State University, a $4 million to add to the Senate's money that had already placed at Clayton State University, as well as a host of other House changes that they made, again, with their monies that you can see on page 31 and 32, 30, of the amendment that the House proposed. Mr. President, I think I've hit the big highlights of changes. If there are other numbers or just middle numbers between the House and the Senate where we agreed or disagreed as to the actual funding necessary to fund such programs. The additions I do think are notable that we should talk about that the governor's request was for Department of Corrections. They asked for additional $46 million. I think the governor's original number was at 10, an additional $36 million then to make a total of 46 for prison guard pay. An additional $44 million at the Department of Human Services was the foster care dollars we talked about. The Senate had already put that in. The governor wanted us to hold that number. And at the Department of Community Service, $4 million that also included covering some things with retention, where they're doing better jobs with retention there now too. Mr. President, if there are any questions, I'll take them now, or otherwise I'll yield the well and let others say their piece.
Senator from the 26th, do you have a question? You want to come to the front? You have a question?
Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, in swapping the money around on the farm package, will that bring us more money from FEMA in doing it?
I don't expect there'll be any more money from FEMA on the farmer's package. I do think there potentially would be more money potentially from FEMA, since the storm has eclipsed the $2 billion threshold for local debris pickup. The local share when a storm is below $2 billion is a 75-25 match, 75% from the feds, 25% from the state and local, which we split as 10% of the state, 15% local. Since it's cleared that $2 billion threshold, though, I do think that our monies in the state monies will go a little bit further on the FEMA package for local debris pickup.
Senator from 53rd, do you want to speak in the well, or you want a question? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Chairman of Appropriations yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that one of the favorite parts of the Senate budget for me is we were spending $60 million to pay off debt? Is that not true?
You voted no, so I don't know which part you liked.
Senator, $60 million is being taken away on page 29. Is that not true?
Yes, sir. In defeasance.
So does that mean, Senator, that we're not paying off any bond debt with any of our surplus revenue?
We're not paying off any early in this budget. You're correct, Senator. And the reason being for that, the defense of that would be, I'm with you, I'd like to pay things down faster as well. The defense of that I have to say makes mathematical sense is that we have 0 bonds in our state now that cost more, that we pay more than 5% on. We are, however, making more on our reserves in interest, more than 5%. We're actually creating a line item for that now and putting it back into the budget. I'm with you. I want to continue to pay off our debt. I actually don't know that it would be a smart thing to pay off the bonds early just by math. I would rather just reduce spending overall.
Senator, is it not true we're spending $200 million a year roughly in interest?
I do believe that number is correct, but Senator, on $11 billion at 6%, we're collecting a lot more than that.
Senator, on page number 18, you see on page 29 it says we're going to take this money and we're going to use it for Hurricane Helene relief. But then on page 18, it just looks like the Hurricane Helene relief just gets smaller. Is that not true?
The Hurricane Helene relief does fall by $15 million on that line item, and then it falls by $32 million on an additional line item. You're correct.
So where exactly is this $60 million going?
That $60 million is most likely rolled back into Department of Corrections, Department of Human Services, and the Department of Community Supervision.
Senator, is it not true? I don't like the answer, most likely.
Well, that's where the dollars are going.
Okay.
If you want an exact answer, the $62 million will be rolled back into the Department of Corrections, the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Community Supervision.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
Senator, you have one more question, or you can yield the well.
Sure.
Recognize the Senator from the 28th.
With the Senator yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, I heard you say something about Savannah State College and Clayton College. What did you say that they were taking money away from them?
No, ma'am. I said the House took and reorganized its bond package to do additional funds at Clayton State and Savannah State University.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You have no more questions, son.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Does anyone else wish to speak for or against the measure here? So we are in a posture of accepting the motion from the senator from the 19th. We do have an objection to this, but we need to vote for this anyway since it is the amended budget. All those in favor of suspending the rules and voting on HB 67, those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 55, the nays are 1, and it is completed. The Senate has agreed to the House position. Moving on to Senate Bill 51. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 51 by Senator Setzler of the 37th and others, a bill to be entitled Act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated related to state, county, and municipal road systems so as to revise contracting procedures related to the acquisition of certain professional services by counties and municipalities, to amend Chapter 91 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated related to public works bidding so as to revise contracting procedures related to the acquisition of certain professional services by counties and municipalities, to provide for definitions, to amend Chapter 22 of Title 50 of the OCGA related to managerial control over acquisition of professional services, so as to expand such provisions to local governments, to provide for and revise definitions, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations General recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. Mr. President, I completes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th to present the bill.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 51 is a bill that requires a qualification-based selection process for the hiring of architects and engineers. It mirrors the process that our state uses at the state level and at the university level, and applies that to cities and counties. Be glad to take questions.
Senator, you have no questions.
With that, I urge your support for Senate Bill 51.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54 and the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 67 to the governor.
The senators move for unanimous consent that we immediately transmit HB 67 to the House. Is there
To the
objection?
House.
The chair hears none. What?
To the House.
All right. All right, good. Without objection, it will be transmitted. All right. We got next. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th. Oh. Mr. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 55.
Sorry, Senator. Just stay with us. Senator from the 4th, just a minute. We're going to read the caption. Go ahead.
Senate Bill 55 by Senator Hickman of the 4th and others, a bill to entitled an act to amend Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to labor and industrial relations so as to phase out the payment of sub-minimum wage to persons with disabilities, to repeal provisions concerning exemptions to the state minimum wage law for persons with disabilities, to provide that no employer shall utilize a certificate issued by the United States Department of Labor pursuant to 29 U.S.C. Section 214C to pay individuals with disabilities less than the federal minimum wage, to provide exemptions, to provide for related matters, to provide a short title, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Now the chair recognizes the senator from the 4th to present the bill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Remember last session we passed the game bill, Georgia as a model employer. If y'all remember, that enabled Martha to work in our goodie section over here. And as I told you before, we got over 150,000 people in Georgia with some type of mental or physical disability, but we only got about 25,000 of them that are actually working. This bill is called the Dignity Pay Act, Senate Bill 55. And this bill is about stopping certain employers referred to as community rehabilitation programs from paying people with physical or mental disabilities less than federal minimum wage, sometime as low as 22 cents an hour. We actually had the organization that pays the 22 cents an hour come and testify in committee against this bill. So they do exist. Background of this bill, last year Representative Sharon Cooper sponsored a bill with the same language, House Bill 1125. It passed the House Industry and Labor Committee, the House floor, and the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee unanimously before running out of time. This happened in 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act, 1938, 93 years ago. The Fair Labor Standards Act, Section 14C, authorized sub-minimum wages based on perceived productivity differences for workers with disabilities, and that was primary for disabled veterans. Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act allows community rehab programs to pay workers with disabilities less than federal minimum wage. While initially created to foster employment opportunities, this provision traps individuals with disabilities in outdated systems. In Georgia, there are 8 community rehab programs using this 14C certificate to pay roughly 250 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities wages as low as 22 cents an hour. Our state has one of the strongest economies in the nation. In fact, as we all know, we're number one for the 11th year for doing business. Georgia could join 13 other states that have already passed such legislation. Community rehab programs will have 2 years, it's not immediate, they'll have 2 years to gradually increase wages to a minimum of $7.25 an hour. This bill does not shut down shelter workshops or eliminate CRPs as an employment option. It simply ensures that employees who work there are paid fairly. Some people thinks that this affects grocery stores and restaurants and all. It does not. It only applies to the community rehab programs. This bill is about basic dignity and fairness, ensuring that people with disabilities are paid at least what we consider the bare minimum for all other workers. I urge the Senate to support the Dignity and Pay Act and help make Georgia a leader in fair employment for all. Thank you, sir, and please vote green. And Mr. President, I yield the will.
The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against this measure? Chair recognizes the senator from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator from the 4th, for your hard work on Senate Bill 55. I'm trying to be respectful of everybody's time here, but I've had several folks in the halls over the past few weeks tell me how important this bill is to them. And to be honest, I've been thinking a little bit about why we needed an amendment like this that was passed in 1974. I'm sure there's a reason, but we'll never know. But what I do know is back in the 70s, the life expectancy of someone with Down syndrome was 25 years old. And today is 60 years old. Often in the 70s, folks like my son were institutionalized and never really given an opportunity to even work in a workplace. Thanks to many medical advances and therapies and initiatives, and then ultimately a more inclusive society, we have that life expectancy has risen. I've heard both sides of this argument as to why we need SB 55, and I've really considered the best outcome for people with developmental disabilities. We all know this isn't a matter of minimum wage. It's ultimately a matter of value and dignity. I would submit to you that my son Cohen is no less deserving of a minimum wage than a typical, fully functioning adult. Through medical breakthroughs that I mentioned earlier and several therapy interventions, a vast majority of people with developmental disabilities can understand what we're voting on here. And personally, I can't look them in the face and tell them that they're less than or than everybody else in the workplace. For those arguing against the bill, I would say sometimes a reset is needed when federal legislation from the 30s and from the 70s is antiquated and no longer relevant. I'm asking you colleagues to support this bill, and again, thank you to the senator from the 4th for making this a priority. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to the agreeing of the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51 and the nays are 3, and this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair wants to congratulate and thank the senator from the 4th for his goodwill, his good work on a very good bill, and senator from the 49th, thank you for your comments as well. I know we've got people in the gallery of which this matter is very meaningful to, and you're welcome and glad to see you up there. Mr. Secretary, let's move on. Let's read caption for the next bill. Senate Bill 139.
Senate Bill 139 by Senator Dixon of the 45th and others, a bill being Town Act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Mulberry, approved February 13th, 2024, so as to change the corporate limits of the city to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations General recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations General offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 139, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Mulberry, approved February 13th, 2024, so as to change the corporate limits of the city to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The chair recognizes the senator from the 45th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 139, it's simply an annexation bill for the city of Mulberry, rounding off some of their city edges, incorporating some commercial parcels that were across the street from the city and a few vacant parcels. With that, Mr. President, be happy to answer any questions.
Senator, I don't see any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. No surprise, I rise in opposition here we have another City of Mulberry bill. Aren't y'all tired of these Mulberry bills, and why are there so many? I can't recall any city, and maybe, I don't have enough tenure here, where we spent so much time trying to get one city through this legislature. I want to note that, not only is just another bailout bill for Mulberry and forcing it through, Gwinnett County, I just want you to know, has been actively trying to come to the table to negotiate on the city of Mulberry. And you know what they're waiting on? The city of Mulberry to come with a local proposal and local negotiations. I agree with my colleagues. I actually think they probably should have gone into mediation a long time ago to try to work out the differences. And even more to the point, the senator from the 45th keeps putting them in as general bills because we're out of process yet again. This is a local bill that should go through a local delegation and be negotiated as such. I have plenty of annexation bills that I have agreed to and signed on locally. But Mulberry is just forcing its way through, and we don't need another out-of-process bill that is supposed to be a local bill. The bigger problem is, and what I keep saying is, Mulberry has not been established in good faith. It's bullying its way into cityhood. It's bullying the county into cityhood. Those of us in unincorporated Gwinnett don't want to pay for Mulberry. And at the end of the day, we're paying for Mulberry. And, the senator from the 45th is spending a lot of political capital on the city of Mulberry, and somehow he is getting 33 of you in this body to go along with him. I just want to be there on the day when this city does not live up to or do what it says it's supposed to do, and I'm going to be like, I told you so. And with that, I yield for questions, Mr. President.
Senator, you have questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes.
Is it not true that the city of Lawrenceville has been locally working on an annexation and they are getting on a local bill?
Absolutely, Senator. Actually, the city of Lawrenceville actually talked to our local delegation. They talked to me and several of us, and they let us know step by step what they're doing. And we are all amendable to that local legislation. I will be signing it.
Is it not true that last year the city of Duluth also had an annexation bill that they worked with everyone on and it was introduced as a local bill?
That is absolutely right, and I was okay with that one as well. And they also went to the county to negotiate that annexation bill.
Is it not true that the city of Suwanee also had a annexation bill last year, and they also went through the local process?
My good friend, Senator from the 7th, that is correct. So we see a pattern here of where, when engaged properly, we are okay with local legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'll yield well.
You have other questions, Senator, if you care to take them? The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Senator from the 45th, do you want to close debate? He waves. All right. The chair hears no one else wishing to speak to the measure, so is there objection to the previous question ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? And the chair hears none. The reporting of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 31, the nays are 22, so this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, let's move on down to Senate Bill 74. Please read the caption.
Senate Bill 74 by Senator Burns of the 23rd and others, the bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 3 of Chapter 12, Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to the sale and distribution of harmful materials to minors, so as to repeal an exemption for libraries and librarians from the provision of Code Section 16-12-103 relating to selling, loaning, distributing, or exhibiting materials harmful to minors, to provide that any violation of such code section shall be a misdemeanor of high and aggravated nature when committed knowingly, to provide for a defense for librarians who make good faith attempts to identify and remove material harmful to minors, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date and applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne, Vice Chairman. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 74, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 3 of Chapter 12, Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to sale or distribution of harmful materials to minors, so as to repeal an exemption for libraries and librarians from the provisions of Code Section 16-12-103 and for other purposes. Mr. President, a minority report to Senate Bill 74 has been attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The chair recognizes this distinguished senator from the 23rd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring you Senate Bill 74. But before we get into the bill, I want to touch base on a couple of quick things. I love libraries. I believe that every Georgian should actively engage in their local library, their university library, their school library. Many of you know that
my 30 years of my life I spent in higher education, and as a part of that opportunity, I had an honor to receive a senior Fulbright scholarship to Sweden. And while I was there, my appointment was in the bibliothek, the Swedish College of Library and Information Science in Borås, Sweden. Handelshögskolan i Borås. I love libraries. I want you to know one very important thing. This is not a bill designed to penalize libraries or librarians. It is a bill designed to protect children. It's simple. It's 2 pages. We'll get to it in a second. First, let me tell you what it does not do. It does not change Georgia's obscenity laws. 1612-103 was adopted in its original form in 1969. It's been around for 50 years. This bill does not change Georgia's obscenity laws. It does not ban any book or any material from a library. It does not ban anything. It does not limit access to material for adults. And it does not, its intent is not to put anyone in jail. There's a lot of stuff out there that is false. Let me tell you what it does do. It requires all Georgians to follow Georgia law. I don't get an exception. You don't get an exception. No one in Georgia is exempted from providing harmful material to minors. It protects children. It does do that. And it provides for an affirmative defense in case someone in the library, a librarian or a library worker, is accused of doing so. Well, let's look at the bill. If you look quickly at the bill, I'm on Section 1. Section 1, lines 15 through 18. That's pretty easy. This is the exception clause. It was adopted in about 1984 for reasons not known to me. I couldn't in the research determine why we chose to add that. Across our nation, there were a number of exemption laws. Most of them have been modified or repealed, and we'll talk about that in a second. But basically on line 18, it just takes section 1612-104 and makes it reserved. So, what else does it do? Section 2. Section 2, we changed one important word on line 22. Except as provided in subsection B of this code section, any person who knowingly violates any provision. You've got to intentionally provide harmful material, obscene material, pornographic material to a minor to be charged under this act. So you have to do it intentionally. You have to know you did it, and you had to do it with malice aforethought. And I'm no attorney. Look at lines 25 through 29. It shall be the affirmative defense to prosecution under this code section. Notice on line 28, if he or she has made a good faith attempt to identify and remove from access to minors all physical or electronically harmful material. So, what do? You place children's materials in children's sections. You place youth materials in youth sections. You place any questionable material in adult sections. I want you to know that store clerks have to comply with this law. 6th grade school teachers have to comply with this law. State senators have to comply with this law. Every Georgian has to comply with 1612-103, except for the very people who are most knowledgeable and most prepared to make an informed decision about what's harmful. We're simply removing that exception, and then we are allowing, if they were in any way charged with a violation, they have an affirmative defense. Quickly, depending upon who you tend to rely on, right now in the United States of America, there are 12 states that have no exceptions. There are 32 states, there are 12 states who have no exceptions to the obscenity laws. There are 32 states who have an affirmative defense, and there are 4 states that have what Georgia has, which is the exception clause. I want to quote one thing. In April of 2024, April 10th, 2024, the Washington Post did an extensive article on this exception rule across the U.S. And I want to quote you from their article. It says, "The Post could not find an instance in which a librarian has been charged under these laws." Not one. Not one. No librarian has been charged under these laws. You know why no librarian has been charged? Because they're doing their job. Because they're protecting our children, and I support them. But there's no need for this exception because they have the ability to effectively document what materials are appropriate and what materials are inappropriate for children. And with that, Mr. President, I'd ask for your favorable consideration for Senate Bill 74, and I'll yield for questions.
You do have some questions, Senator. The chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Macon, the senator from the 26th, for the first question.
Macon. My good friend.
Gentleman yield.
Absolutely.
What do you consider harmful materials?
That's an excellent question. U.S. Code, by the way, defines that. And harmful material, if I can get my glasses, I'll read it for you. It's commonly known as the Miller test. It was Miller versus California in 1973, Senator. And it states that whether the average person applying contemporary adult community standards finds the matter taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. Prurient. That word means erotic, lascivious, abnormal, unhealthy, degrading, shameful, or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion. That's one of the Miller tests. There are 3. This is long-standing federal law. We're not creating anything new, folks. We're just asking Georgians to comply with both federal and state law.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Gentleman yield.
Absolutely.
There have been efforts in previous years to do this that I think were perfected in this bill. I appreciate your work on this. Isn't it true that on line 22, as you highlighted the word knowingly?
Yes.
The library worker would have to have actual knowledge, be proven to have actual knowledge that this existed and they were complicit with it. It's not just about being present on the shelf, isn't it true, that they would actually have to have actual knowledge of specific content that they opted to not remove, correct?
The gentleman is correct. If you look carefully in lines 25 through 29, the affirmative defense guarantees the librarian, and thanks to the senator for his recommendations in the committee, not only the librarian, but workers in the library who might be challenged. They have the same affirmative defense if they make a good faith attempt to identify and remove from access, not remove the material from the library, but simply to remove it from access to minors. All physical or electronic material harmful to minors.
Senator, do you yield for one further question?
Yes, sir.
As you said earlier, there's 4 states approximately that have the law we have.
That's correct.
What we're proposing is to be with the 32 states that have an affirmative defense, and there are 12 states that have no protection whatsoever. The protections this provides for library workers are not provided at all in 12 states. This puts us with the 32, does it
The
not?
gentleman's correct. So we are one of only 4 states in the United States that currently have an exception law on our books. This will move us to remove the exception clause, but allow for an affirmative defense.
Appreciate your time to get this right for library workers and for our young people.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes, sir, for the 27th.
I want to make sure I understand. This is a simple bill. You're striking 3 lines and adding 5 plus a word, but I want to make sure I understand the current state of play as you've described it. Let's just imagine a hypothetical scenario, if you could clarify this for me. There's a hypothetical Barnes & Noble next to a library. Under current Georgia law, the Barnes & Noble cannot provide material to minors that fails the Miller test, but the library has this, due to this carve-out that's currently in code, can provide that material to minors. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the store clerk at a Barnes & Noble is not protected under current Georgia law, even though they are not as well prepared or as well trained as that professional librarian.
Do you further yield?
Absolutely.
So what you might see at a Barnes & Noble or even at a gas station is the removal from general availability of this material such that the Barnes & Noble worker or the gas station employee would ensure that it's not a minor before they provide that material to them. And that's essentially what you're also asking the librarians to do. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to see the minority report?
I have.
Do you further yield?
Absolutely.
There's a sentence on here that says librarians are exempt from the obscenity statute for a reason. It's the first line of the main paragraph there. Senator, can you help me understand, or have any of the members of the minority party explain to you the reason that librarians should be providing obscene material to children inside the library?
I have not received an explanation of what the reason might be. I would suggest that we'll let them speak to it, but at the end of the day, I can see no valid reason to exempt a librarian or similar professional from protecting children.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
So how many states did you say already do this?
Currently, there are 34 states that have affirmative defense, and there are 4 states that have no exceptions at all. And then there are only 4 that currently allow for an exemption or an exception. Only 4. And they are Georgia, Louisiana, Washington, and Pennsylvania.
Wow. So just for clarification for us non-lawyers in the room, the affirmative defense, can you just go through that for us a little bit?
Yeah, that would suggest that should someone be accused of violating this statute, they would have the ability to defend their actions because they had made a good faith attempt to identify and remove from access to minors any physical or electronic material that's harmful. So essentially, if I walked into a library, Senator, and I found something that I felt was inappropriate for a minor, and I brought that to the attention of the librarian could then reclassify that book if they agreed and put it in an adult section, and there would be no other necessary action.
So that would be...
That would be compliance.
So
that would be compliance.
That's that good faith
That's
decision
that good
that you're
faith
talking about.
intent
Okay.
to make sure that the materials are properly changed, shelved. Now, I would say that wouldn't necessarily be for a single individual coming in and making those decisions. The librarian, their professional knowledge, could identify it as appropriate, or as a collective group, they could. But at the end of the day, if they make a good faith effort to protect children, they have an affirmative defense.
And that's, if you'll yield for another question,
Certainly.
and that's your point when you're relating to a librarian who is trained, college, many times a master's in masters in science relating to this, and you're asking them to make a decision that they're well versed in versus Barnes & Noble versus a gas station versus other entities?
I think they are, our librarians are all degreed in Masters of Library Science. They have spent years understanding their art and their profession, and I believe they are the most qualified to make this decision.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 10th.
One more.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Absolutely.
Senator, I'm really trying to understand your bill,
Okay.
but I guess I'm having some problems with the portion of the electronic material. Can you explain to me how a librarian could keep all potentially electronic harmful material out of their library?
Senator, it's current law that electronic access to harmful material is restricted. That's true at the university level, it's true at the secondary level, and it's true in libraries. So, library systems currently have in place filters that would not allow people who utilize the system, especially minors, to access certain electronic websites that might be harmful, pornographic sites or obscene sites or sites that could indeed endanger their health and well-being. So those systems are in place and they are managed through the library system itself and the computer systems. Now the librarian would have input, but they would enjoy the protection from the overall system vendor who puts the filters on.
Senator Further,
One more time. Yes, sir.
Senator, would the librarian be responsible for programming any of those systems?
They would contract that. They're not responsible, but they would purchase that through a contract agent. I would suggest that at the university level where I was, we utilized a system to maintain control over access to certain sites. And I was not directly involved, nor were my librarians, but we utilized an effective tool to limit access to certain inappropriate sites for both minors and, in this case, for adults. You got to realize that at a university level, you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds or older. So it's not unusual for you to have filters on your electronic systems. I think this bill specifically, however, deals with printed material, whether it be literary material or art or graphic types of things. It's the printed material that would be shelved as a routine course of library operations.
Senator, I do understand that you said it deals primarily, however, you do have electronic in here. So my problem is you're holding a librarian responsible for material that she or he may not even program, even know how to program in the system. In the event someone else makes a mistake, they would be held liable for it.
I would suggest, Senator, this has been common practice in library science for decades, and that not a single librarian has been jailed or criminally prosecuted because of this legislation. Its intent, Senator, is to protect children, not to penalize librarians or anyone else. Remember, Senator, you are responsible for this, and I am responsible for this. We have no exceptions. And I think that our librarians are the best qualified to address this issue. I appreciate the question. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Okay, the senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 44th, are you presenting the minority report? Oh, okay. Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm rising in opposition to SB 74. This bill, I think, is misguided. It would criminalize librarians simply for doing their jobs, which is providing books, literature, and resources that educate, challenge, and inspire young minds and older minds alike. This legislation is not about protecting children. It's much more about censorship, fear, and government overreach into our institutions. Under SB 74, librarians could face criminal charges for furnishing books that contain vaguely defined, sexually explicit content deemed, quote unquote, harmful to minors. But the issue is, who decides what is harmful? Literature, history, health, education, and even classic works of fiction often contain discussions of sexuality and relationships. Are we really wanting to turn our librarians into criminals for providing access to books that discuss topics like puberty, LGBTQ+ rights, or the realities of sexual violence? We've seen that classic books like To Kill a Mockingbird, Beloved, or even The Diary of Anne Frank have in the last few years suddenly been deemed too risky for our shelves. And I would suggest to you that that very vagueness is why the author pointed out that no librarian has actually been charged under these statutes around the country, because it's far too vague and far too subjective of a standard to hold someone criminally accountable, especially when they are doing a job that is critical in educating young minds. Research shows that schools that have librarians, students perform much better. They achieve much higher scholastically due to the dedicated presence of a librarian. So therefore, this bill doesn't just threaten books, it threatens intellectual freedom and education itself. Libraries exist to serve all members of a community, not just a certain narrow perspective or a certain set of beliefs. If a parent disapproves of a book, they have every right to guide their own child's reading choices. But they do not and should not have the right to impose those restrictions on every other child in Georgia and his or her families. So let's be clear, it really seems that this book isn't so much about protecting minors from real harm. As we've heard, no librarian across the country has needed to be charged. It seems that it's more about banning certain ideas. And we know that there are some constituents of some of us out there who are very worked up about ideas that they do not like. Whether it's about sexuality or LGBTQ youth. And those are mostly what it's about. And we know there are some very loud people burning up some of your emails and phones to try to get you to bring this bill. But their perspective, these folks' perspective, their perspective is important, but it is not total. It cannot control the totality of information that we allow presented in our very diverse and pluralistic society. We should not create any climate of fear where a librarian feels that they need to second guess every book on their shelves or risk criminal sanctions. We want librarians to foster a love of reading and critical thinking, not send a message that knowledge is dangerous, that censorship is acceptable, and that those who provide access to literature should live in fear of prosecution. We should be encouraging young people to read. Folks, I would posit to you that our problem, if there is one, certainly is not whether librarians haven't spent hours combing their shelves for titles that some group in someone's district somewhere deems inappropriate for all the people in everyone else's district. A much bigger problem would be that we don't have enough kids reading at all. In fact, I'm talking even past whether or not they're reading for enjoyment, which is so tied to how well they'll perform in school and therefore their future as our future workforce and the life that they can hope to aspire to them, for themselves, being well educated. Our kids, we well know, and Senator from the 4th, I'm sorry he's not sitting there, has worked hard on this, as have many others. Our kids actually can't read at all. So why are we spending time talking about banning librarians instead of getting an update on what our Literacy Council is doing and passing other bills to ensure that our newfound science of reading, it has the proper appropriations to make sure that our kids will not continue to suffer in the sense that about 60% of them cannot read on grade level. Why are we wasting time on a ridiculous bill to criminalize librarians? Maybe it's to distract from the fact that we've run our government and our schools so poorly that 60% of our kids cannot read on grade level. That's the real scandal here, folks. Sometimes it's appropriate to tell activists in your own district, in your own party, you know what, sit down and shut up. And we don't see that enough. And this is a prime example of where we need to say, we hear you, but sit down and shut up. I urge my colleagues to reject this dangerous overreach and to stand up for the rights of readers, parents, and librarians alike by voting no on SB 74. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there are none, I shall yield the well.
You do have questions.
All right,
The chair recognizes the senator from the 37th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is the lady yield?
Of course, to my good friend from the 37th.
Thank you. The author was talking earlier about the Miller test. The content that we're talking about, is it not true? The content that could potentially get someone in trouble is by definition that which would land a Barnes & Noble worker in jail for selling to a minor, correct?
Well, we discussed this, I believe we were both there in committee, and there is no one out there combing Barnes & Noble shelves to try to land Barnes & Noble employees
Correct.
in jail.
Correct.
That's simply not happening, and I assume that we all, or some of us, have some constituents that probably do dislike the young adult section at Barnes & Noble.
Sure, but
So they could busy themselves with that as opposed to messing with public libraries.
But it's a legal fact of this bill. The content we're talking about is only those things that would land a Barnes & Noble worker in jail for selling to a minor. That's what we're talking about. And for those volumes, that content that's on our school shelves, this bill very clearly, isn't it true? And I know the lady's a learned attorney. The library worker would have to have actual knowledge of specific content. That same content that would land a Barnes & Noble worker in jail for selling to a minor, if they had actual knowledge, then and only then could they be held accountable, and they would still have an affirmative defense under this. Is that not true?
Well, to my good friend, I always enjoy discussing these issues with you, and I appreciate how much you think about the issues. And it is true that the senator from the 23rd has made it knowingly and provided an affirmative defense, which is certainly better than it might be otherwise. I think the problem is that even, the Miller standard or the standard that's in our code right now, it's in the bill, but 103 is the actual chapter, they're all just very subjective. They're very subjective. And so that's really the problem we're dealing with. And I would posit to you, Senator from the 37th, that's really why we don't see Barnes & Noble employees in jail, and why, as the author shared, we haven't seen librarians charged under these statutes either, because it's simply just really almost impossible to enforce because the standards are vague and subjective.
Does the lady yield for one further question? Last one. So again, we appreciate your recognition that the content we're talking about is that content that would land a Barnes & Noble worker in jail if they sold it to a minor. The library worker would have to knowingly provide that, and then in this affirmative defense doesn't require anything other than demonstrating a good faith attempt to do so. So the presentation of a good faith attempt to do this and to provide the protection is all that's needed to have no legal responsibility. What that means, isn't it true, that only if they had actual knowledge and the intent to leave it on the shelves, this content that would land a Barnes & Noble worker in jail, then and only then, with no good faith attempt, could there be any responsibility for a library worker. Is that true?
The situation is that it is so subjective and vague that it's impossible to prove, which is why, again, I don't think we've seen it utilized against Barnes & Noble workers or librarians. So I think probably we should abandon the farce and admit that probably the standard we have now is probably the better way to go. But you're right, the author did take pains to make sure that it was not, it would not be incredibly easy to throw one of the librarians in jail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'll yield the well.
You have no further questions, but the senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair will recognize the senator from the 14th to present the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will try to take us out of the weeds of this bill for just a moment on this dreary pre-crossover day afternoon to take you back to 2019 when I, a small House member, newly elected, no beard, was in the subcommittee with the senator from the 37th of the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. I want you to picture this. It's just me, no beard, sitting in a room with the senator from the 37th, who's the chairman of a subcommittee, and we are talking about this bill. And maybe there were other people there, but senator from the 37th, I just have fond memories of us chopping things up for hours on end. Here is what I remember from the House Judiciary Non-Civil hearings from pre-COVID, seems like a lifetime ago, about this bill. I remember that advocates came with a stack of questionable materials that they alleged were at risk of being presented to Georgia's students. Some of those materials were from EBSCOhost, which, as we know, is an online database that contains sprawling, vast amounts of information, but were not just paper books. And the EBSCOhost database exemplars, were part of the package that they presented to the committee to say, we have got to do something about obsidian schools. Now, nowhere was there testimony that specific Georgia school districts had enabled access to those specific materials in EBSCO. Some of those materials were just straight up representations of LGBTQ people in normal life situations that some parents might have a cultural or whatever spiritual objection to. But suffice it to say that they came ready with their sample materials, and the first words out of the witness's mouth in committee were, well, we've heard a lot of allegations that this bill would criminalize anybody, but there's no criminal penalties in this bill, so moving right along, and turn the page. And I sat there with my mouth open, because it was the same bill that you have before you now in the Senate that took away an exception for librarians and media technicians to misdemeanor criminal liability. So the first words out of the witness's mouth were a lie, obscuring what this bill actually did. Now, it's funny because that witness started running for office later for State House, and I went to the well in the House on a similar measure, which was about parents having more control in schools, being able to go to schools and challenge things and escalate to the school board, all that. And I said, you should know that the witness who lied as her first words in committee is now running to become one of you. Well, she lost her first primary, but is now a seated state representative from House District 81. And she beat an incumbent that the majority over there did a lot of work to try to protect after only one term, sadly. So you see that there is a trajectory here. The way that political power moves doesn't take 1 year, 2 years, it takes 5 years, it takes 10 years. And what happens is a fringe idea that only the weirdos at the county party want turns into a talking point that makes its way to a bill. The bill gets filed, and it flails around for 3 or 4 years. Because why? It gets a hearing maybe, but ultimately, cooler heads, the rules chairman, the speaker will shut it down. Then elections happen, and maybe 2024 happens, and President Trump wins the presidency again, and we see that we get political valence out of targeting minorities like trans people for political points, or going back to an ethic of book banning relating to materials that might depict gay people in ways that are normal. They might kiss in pictures, believe it or not. And now we have a renewed attempt to take what once was a fringe idea in the county party meeting and turn it into law. Here we are finally creating a misdemeanor for teachers and librarians who deal with, media technicians also, who deal with access to both printed and online materials in schools. It turns out, you may be surprised, that many librarians and media technicians are Republicans. Republican voters. I know because I drove not an insignificant amount of minutes or miles to a media tech conference years ago. I was invited because I was vocally opposed to this in committee and I guess made some friends with the media technicians. But I spoke to a group of people. Some were obviously coded as Democrats, some from Metro Atlanta, some not from Metro Atlanta, obviously coded as Republicans. And those media technicians and librarians said to me, "We think this is crazy. A criminal penalty? Some people are in tears because their job is to take care of students. Their job is to go to the school every day and do the best thing for these kids." Have y'all seen Batman Begins, the movie? To use a literary reference, I think appropriate for this bill. You know the Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy? And he uses what's called a fear toxin. Do you remember this scene where, his act of terror in Gotham is to unleash this fear toxin that scrambles your brain and makes you see things all quivery, and normal people, like a kid, looks scary because the kid, all warbled up, looks like a threat? This is fear toxin stuff, y'all. You've got a handful of parents who don't want to see ordinary depictions maybe of LGBTQ, or they're uncomfortable with their own sexuality and they don't want any sexual themes whatsoever presented to children. But what's their solution? To go to the State House and put a criminal penalty on teachers. Let me ask you this. How many groups of people can you give this treatment to before the fear toxin starts to consume the average voter, the median of your base? Because right now, we're talking about trans people today, but we're also talking about librarians and media techs who probably were voting reliably Republican in some cases, but have to think twice about a majority party that's going to let the fear toxin transform the school library environment into a battleground where criminal liability is at stake. I want to address a couple of the author's concerns. I always have to give it up to the Senator from the 23rd for being the consummate senator in terms of preparation and presentation. But there are a couple aspects I want to talk about. This idea that this isn't meant to penalize teachers. That was a quote. Or that not a single librarian has been charged. That is not the purpose of this bill. Y'all know that if y'all actually put a librarian or media tech in jail, that would be a political nuclear bomb. That would be terrible. You would never do that. But what you would do is put a law on the books so that when a parent who has concerns about any depiction of sexuality they don't like or anything in a material, one of the tens of thousands of books or hits on EBSCO when they go to the librarian or the media tech, I think it's exactly the way that the senator from the 23rd described. I think that's exactly what would happen. What did he say? He said the appropriate thing to do would be to get the complaint and move it to the adult section. Get the complaint and move it to the adult section. Not exercise independent judgment under current Board of Education regulations that already exist, with a committee that already exists, to decide from an independent standpoint, based on the expertise of those media technicians, librarians, whether this is appropriate for children. All this bill does is move the judgment, the discretion as to whether materials are appropriate for children from the media techs and librarians who've sworn an oath and dedicated their life to helping kids and protecting kids. It transfers their decision to a prosecutor. So now it's not up to the media techs and librarians whether a material is appropriate for children. It's up to an elected solicitor. Let me tell you, as somebody who deals with criminal legal issues both from committee and just as a matter of interest as an attorney, it is not much consolation to be told that the reason you won't be held criminally liable for some conduct is because, well, we've created an affirmative defense. That's something you have to prove by a preponderance of the evidence once you've already been charged, once you've already retained counsel, once you've already gone to court, and at your trial, you get to tell a jury, I was doing everything in my power to try to scrub the entire internet on EBSCOhost, by the way, and every printed material in a library with tens of thousands of volumes for anything that could possibly offend a single parent. That is the affirmative defense that this bill creates, and that's the only protection it affords. But again, let's go back to brass tacks. Will we see a librarian charge? Maybe not. But we know that because we do politics, and we know how these things work and why we do things the way we do them. But tell the hundreds, thousands of librarians and media techs in Georgia, both Democrats and Republicans, who are watching this dismayed, tell them that they won't be charged. But I bet you won't, because it's the threat of being charged that's going to make that librarian comply with the first demand that a parent provides or makes, regardless of how unreasonable that demand is. I hope the House kills this bill. I hope that the arc of the right-wing universe does not keep bending towards criminalizing librarians. But here we are. It's just another year at the General Assembly. Mr. President, I will yield for questions.
No questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Senator from the 23rd, do you wish to close the debate? He chooses to close the debate, so we will hear from the distinguished senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. We've been here a while on what I thought was a fairly straightforward bill. I want to respond to some of my colleagues' concerns, but I want to first start with House Bill 67. You'll pull out your copy of House Bill 67, and if you turn to page 29, you'll notice that public libraries in South Georgia Regional Library System, Valdosta, got an appropriation of $3 million. And right below that, the Nell Brown Library in Toombs County got an appropriation for $3 million. If you go to the next page, you will see that we increased funds for one-time funding for replacement of the O'Kelly Memorial Library in Walton County. That was only $900,000. If you drop down a few lines, you'll see that we constructed the Pelham Carnegie Library in Pelham, Mitchell County, Georgia. Now, what does that tell me? It tells me that the Senate loves libraries and the legislature supports libraries. Let me take a minute or two and comment on my good friend from the 44th. She used the word censorship. Censorship? Nowhere in SB 74 is that term used. We don't ban anything. Nothing is banned. No book, no pictorial, no graphic, nothing. We simply ask it be put in the right place. She indicated that we're going to ban librarians. She used the term ban librarians. Nowhere in Senate Bill 74 do we ban a librarian. We love our librarians and we appreciate them. My good friend from the 14th, when he was in the House, my only real question is, you had no beard. The question is, was there any hair? So I don't know. I need a picture to see. Couldn't tell. I would tell you that he suggested that we're on, this is a fringe idea, I find it interesting that out of 50 states, 46 of them have adopted this fringe idea. Okay? 46 out of 50. Provided for either eliminating the exception altogether, which we're not doing, or they provided for an affirmative defense. The last thing that I would challenge my good friend from the 14th with is fear toxin. Fear. I don't want librarians to be afraid of anything. I want them to love children, and I want them to support children. So at the end of the day, the question is very simple. Do you support children, and do you believe that we should protect them from harmful material? If you do, I'd ask for your favorable support for Senate Bill 74. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
The senator has yielded the well. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? And the chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 32 and the nays are 23. So this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. All right, let me have your attention for just a minute. A little bit of housekeeping. We've got dinner that is being brought in. It's good food from Maggiano's, but we're going to get through this next bill, SB 85, and then we're going to break, give everybody time to eat, and hopefully plan to be, depending upon how long we debate 85, SB 85, try to come back in around 6 p.m. So with that, for your interim snacking, you might want to put the snacks down for a minute because we've got a great dinner that we'll get to as soon as we get done with SB 85. So with that, Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Bill 85 by Senator Brass of the 6th and others, bills being titled an act to amend Article 12, Chapter 3 of Title 20, the official code of Georgia annotated related to post-secondary education grants for foster children and adopted children, so as to establish a grant program to provide grants to former foster youth who meet eligibility requirements subject to specific appropriations, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns, Chairman. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Higher Education offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 85, bill to be entitled Act to amend Article 12 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to post-secondary education grants for foster children and adopted children, so as to establish a grant program to provide grants to former foster youth who meet eligibility requirements and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill provides a framework by which the General Assembly can fund scholarships for young adults who have been in Georgia's foster system as children. It supplements other available sources such as federal grants and the Hope Scholarship to ensure that these young people can cover not only tuition but also other necessary costs of higher ed such as books, fees, housing, and a meal plan. With no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions. Well, wait a minute, I'm sorry. We've got one late arriving question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th for a question.
Thank you, Chairman Yoke.
I yield.
Mr. Chairman, is it not correct that this bill does, in fact, allow the funds to go to foster children, unlike the bill that we passed last week?
Actually, this bill eventually will end up in the hands of foster children, yes.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you very much. To the gentleman in the well, did you yield?
I yield.
The bill calls for that this program is based on the appropriation. The program that would be set up.
That is correct.
And just let us know, if you will, what's the current situation with appropriation, or what's the vision of when that's going to be, when we're going to put the money into it.
My hope is that we end up with this in the big budget.
In the big budget. Yeah, that would be ideal. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you. And
Thank
Mr. President, I'm going to break a little decorum here. Rules is going to meet in about 20 minutes after this vote. So Rules Committee, go get your food first, because if you wait till after the meeting, there may not be any left. So Rules Committee, grab your food, eat it. You got 20 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that announcement. All right, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Must be dinner time. There's objection to the previous question being ordered? Nope, the chair hears none of the previous question is ordered. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are none, so this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. All right, thank you. The chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 23rd for an announcement. Y'all listen up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we had planned the higher education